So I finally got around to watching The Executioner Way of Life. This latest episode. Was a little tired there on Friday and wanted to come into this episode fresh, and glad I did, because this was one of the stronger episodes out of the 6 here, and a major step up from episode 5 if you ask me. I even went back and rewatched episode 5 a couple of days before the latest episode dropped, and truthfully, I actually liked episode 5 less than when I made my initial review, so to have an episode like this immediately remove all the things that I disliked about episode 5 and where the future of the story might go is a blessing. It really is. Because even though I've seen tons of people suspect that Akari might remember, or might have a more sinister side, or might just be more than just the dense, clueless girl who somehow activates this ability to rewind time, whether it's on purpose, whether it's just a default kind of self-defense mechanism. Clearly, there's got to be more to her than meets the eye, and without a doubt, there was. But there's 2 things about this episode that has me very, very excited about the future. First of which, they removed Orwell. They immediately just killed her off, and they said that ain't what the story's gonna be, which is very exciting for me, because personally, even though I think there's elements to her story that make sense and I think are kind of intriguing, like the fact that she did a lot of good for humanity over the course of her history, then got greedy because she wanted to live forever, kind of as a reward. I think that's an interesting concept, but truthfully, I don't want to see this character around, and I wasn't expecting her to die. I truly wasn't. I was ready for this to be the main antagonist up until at least episode 12. And the fact that they used Akari's pure concept to just age her, to just kill her in that way, I thought that was brilliant. I was really happy with that. But then to see, like, the truth of Akari and the fact that she's so, like, it's true. Like, what I was expecting was that she doesn't actually like Menno, and I thought maybe that was her putting on an act for her own ulterior motives. Seemingly not. She seemingly looks at her with love in her eyes, and the fact that she does give herself amnesia with little bits of clues here and there, so she'll keep remembering the key components, like she loves Menno, she'll do anything to protect her. But the fact of the matter is, like, she is violent, she is brutal. I mean, that scene when she clues in and just obliterates that entire room, almost like it was a Thanos snap. And, like, I love the subtle remarks, like with that big blob that was trying to erase her memory and or at the very least her identity. She couldn't do it, and she makes a remark being like, no matter how many times I try, I can never destroy that for some reason. It's a bit odd, but it is what it is. I love the fact that this girl is literally like, she's someone who will kill anyone in her way if it means it might harm Menno and her's relationship. And the fact that she has this desire to be killed by Menno is interesting, because based on the snippet that we got at the very end with her basically watching Menno die, she was kind of covered in this almost like soot that then dissolved, and then you had Flair about to kill her, and then clearly a rewind happened, right? So I'm curious to see if the reason her desire to be killed by Menno isn't because she actually wants to die, but more so because no matter how many times she loops through this reality, Menno always dies. But if there's a way for potentially Menno to kill her, maybe she won't die. I have a feeling that it's probably something to do with her ability, like maybe something triggers and then she ages or something. I just imagine it's going to be in that direction, but at the same time, there has been some pretty interesting plot twists that did shake it up in ways that it's harder to predict. But either way, I don't think it's a desire because she's suicidal or anything, but more so she wants to save Menno. But Menno, at this point in the relationship, is just, like, kind of infatuated with killing her. At first, I was a little iffy on that, to be honest, because after seeing Orwell do this crazy shit, I thought maybe that would snap her out of to maybe thinking, hey, do all the summons actually have to be killed, or maybe we can go a different way. But then when you consider Flair is still someone she trusts, and Flair was her biggest mentor, it makes sense that she wouldn't immediately snap out of the idea of, like, maybe the entire thing that I was taught isn't bullshit, there was just a bad apple, not the entire thing, right? So I think it does work, but I would have maybe liked to see her push back a bit more before immediately just saying, okay, I'm still going to kill the girl with time abilities, right? But still, it's interesting because I do think because now that we see Akari's point of view, it makes some of the things that had we not seen Akari's point of view feel more believable and acceptable in my opinion. Because, like, imagining had they not shown us anything about Akari in this episode, she just came in, Menno used her abilities, and then she's like, I'm gonna go kill her. It would have been a little more harder to stomach in my opinion, but by seeing her perspective and the fact that we see Menno dying in her arms and then the whole reset happens, it makes it a bit more believable why that plotline should be there for longer than just an episode or two, right? And I really like that about this episode because, in my opinion, this is the episode that saved the series. Because had any other author wrote this, honestly, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, Orwell would have been around for 18 episodes worth minimum. Like, that concept would have just been there. She would have had to retreat with Akari, there would have been this big rebellion or something, but instead the author's like, hey, we're gonna twist something that's pretty cliche and just remove it immediately and do something different, which is pretty bold, I have to say, because I haven't seen many stories go quite in that direction, and it makes it a very worthwhile plotline, if you ask me, and something that makes me excited now that, honestly, Akari is probably the most interesting part of the show now. And, I mean, I wouldn't say it normally, but even Momo and her kind of like, princess friend over there is also kind of interesting to follow, which I never thought I'd root for. I mean, there's a couple other like small emotional moments, like Momo getting upset by the ribbons. You can argue, I mean, it's just a thing she's tying her hair with. But given the fact that it was her first gift in a very difficult time in her life, you understand the rage. But I have to say, the animation went in hard with visual flair. There's so many like grotesque and really creative deaths. The one time where she basically, like, it almost feels like you're glitching in the Matrix, and she takes this, like, dragon-like beast, and it's just this weird sphere of energy, looked really rad, or even that one Blood Knight kind of, like, dissolves into goo and just is almost, like, eating itself from the inside. Some really creative and brutal deaths, and I just love how they had fun with the magic once again, like, the moment where she throws her knife attached to the string, looking like she's trying to destroy the big bottle of blood. And even though that wasn't her actual attack, and then she used the bubbles to do this, like, giant energy attack. Just some really cool, creative battles across the board. In an episode that I didn't really have, like, that high of expectations. I heard good things before this episode, like, watching it anyway. A lot of people saying, like, oh shit, this is a really good episode. So, had me excited. But I mean, I just wasn't expecting them to remove the thing that made it kind of unbearable, in my opinion, so early, and then just continue back into the greatness. Because there were some silly aspects about Orwell plan. I mean, stuff I didn't even think about, but commenters like pointed out, like the fact that she had people investigate her own crimes to hide up her crimes, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually kind of weird. So just the fact that they removed that cliche is just really nice, in my opinion. And I mean, I just expect great things going forward now that they've really kind of got back into like episode 1 through 4's quality for me of kind of dissecting and breaking apart those tropes. I mean, similar to episode 1, that boy, the edgy boy, who's like, I'm gonna use my powers, I'm gonna be edgy and vengeful, and you're gonna be in my harem. Like, don't you love this? They killed that cliche and removed it within a matter of seconds, and they pretty much did the same thing with Orwell, if you ask me. So I love it, personally. I can see the hype, and definitely one of the strongest episodes of this show for sure. But thoughts, if you have any. What did you think? What did you think of how they twisted around the story? Whether if you're a fan of the source material or if you're anime original like myself, let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.